Hi everyone, my name is Carolyn Smith. This is my kitchen science midterm. Today I'm going to be making a banana bread recipe to exhibit the scientific function of ingredients as well as their importance for a successful recipe. First of all, I'd like to point out the sanitation of the kitchen. The space is clear, it has been disinfected, and all perishable items have been kept in appropriate containers and out of the temperature zone to avoid contamination and temperature abuse. So let's get to it. To summarize the recipe for you, it is a mixture that includes butter, sugar, eggs, salt, vanilla, baking soda, and flour. So I'm going to start with the flour. And basically any baking mixture contains flour. For this recipe, we're going to want to use all-purpose flour. It has a medium amount of protein in it, which is more than cake flour and less than bread flour. It has been enriched to give it that white color and put back in some nutrients that were removed during processing. So I'm going to start with the dry ingredients and put 1.5 cups of flour in the bowl. And that's what I had there. There's 1.5 cups of flour in there. And then we're going to move on to the next dry ingredient. So in baking, you have to use a leavening agent for your bread to rise. Sodium bicarbonate, commonly known as baking soda, is one of the most widely used leavening agents. It needs something acidic, which means it has to have a pH of less than or equal to 6 to react, which in this recipe is a slightly acidic vanilla. When the baking soda does react, it goes through the fermentation process in which it feeds off the sugar and produces carbon dioxide bubbles. Many people actually confuse baking soda and baking powder. Now, we're not using this in this recipe, but the difference is really important to note. Basically, baking powder has both an acidic agent, both baking soda in it, and then an acidic agent like cream of tartar, a drying agent like starch already in it. This means that you do not need an acidic agent in the recipe to have the baking powder react. Single-acting baking powder will react upon mixing and should be baked right away. Double-acting baking powder will react twice, once upon mixing and once upon heating, so it is used for dough that needs to sit in the refrigerator for a while. However, this recipe uses baking soda, as said before, and the acidic nature of the vanilla causes it to react and produce CO2 bubbles. So we're going to mix 1 teaspoon of baking soda in the bowl with the flour. And just stir that up. Get a spoon here. Okay, next is the salt. The salt is actually a very important part of the recipe. While in cookie recipes, the salt mostly functions as a flavor-adding ingredient, but the case is much different for breads. Salt absorbs moisture, which strengthens the gluten and keeps carbon dioxide from expanding. This allows the flavor of the dough to develop, but too much salt can slow down fermentation. So if you've had banana bread before, you know it's a fairly dense bread. The salt plays a part in keeping the bread from rising too much. But as said before, too much salt can keep the bread from rising enough as it can slow down fermentation. So we're just going to add 1/2 teaspoon of salt in it with the baking soda and the flour. And we are just going to mix that together, get a nice homogeneous mixture in there, so it's all spread out through there. Alright, next we're going to talk about the wet ingredients. So for the sake of time, the butter and sugar have already been creamed. And the bananas have also been mashed. The sugar and the butter in here have multiple functions, but I'm going to start off with the sugar. So the sugar is used to make the bread sweet, but also to give the baking soda sugars to feed off of and produce CO2. The bananas are used for taste and for moisture, because if you notice, we didn't add water in this recipe, so you need something to give it just a little moisture in the recipe. And now I'm going to talk about the butter that is in this butter sugar mixture right now. Most of us just add butter because we think it makes things taste better, which, although true, is not the whole story. Butter is a lipid. The structure of lipids prevents disulfide bonding, which is called shortening the dough. Why does this matter? Well, gluten forms by disulfide bonds of the proteins glutenin and gliadin. Gluten makes the dough stretchy and gives the bread a strong structure. Well, we don't always want the texture of light, airy breads. So by preventing disulfide bonding, we are keeping gluten from forming and preventing the dough from trapping too much CO2. So we're essentially keeping the bread from rising too much. We're just keeping it a nice, dense bread. So then we have the dry ingredients mixed, the butter and sugar creamed, and now we need to add the eggs and vanilla. Now you may be wondering what the eggs are for. One thing this recipe is really lacking is moisture. I said the bananas helped with that, and that's true, but it needs a little more. But also, it acts as an emulsifier. It's basically a substance that binds everything else together. It acts like a glue for things that don't normally mix. So we are going to add 2 eggs. That's what I just added to that. It's the butter and sugar. And get that to mix together. And then after that, I'm going to add half a teaspoon of vanilla. And as I said before, the vanilla is the thing that gives it that really acidic part of the ingredients that has the baking soda react with it. And those are our main ingredients. You know, there actually isn't a whole lot to this recipe. It's nice, it's simple, it's good for this kind of thing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stir here. I'm going to stir the bananas in here, and I'm going to mix it all together. I just wanted to show you real quick what it'll look like in the pan, and I'm put in the oven, and we'll see this bread in 60 minutes. And this is the finished product. So thanks for watching. That's how you make banana bread, and how the science of all those ingredients come together to make food. So thank you. Bye.